The courtroom was silent, heavy, and full of curious eyes. People sat close together, whispering under their breath as the door at the back slowly opened. Everyone turned at the same time, their heads moving like a wave. A tall, thin old man stepped inside. His shoulders were slightly bent, and his slow steps made it clear that age had not been kind to him. His face carried deep lines like stories carved by time. His clothes were simple, an old jacket, a plain shirt, worn-out shoes. Nothing about him looked powerful or dangerous. To most people, he looked like someone who could barely lift a bag of groceries, not someone who had once served the country. But something about him made a few officers at the back sit up straight. They didn't know why. Maybe it was the way he walked. Maybe it was the calm in his tired eyes. Maybe it was the silence he brought with him. Whatever it was, the atmosphere changed the moment he stepped in. The judge watched with a bored expression as the old man moved toward the defendant's table. A few people laughed quietly. A woman whispered to her friend, "He looks like he got lost on the way to the hospital." Another man muttered, "Why is this old guy even in court?" Someone else said, "What trouble can he even cause now?" But the old man didn't react. He didn't look left or right. He didn't seem bothered by the stares or the whispers. His hands were shaking slightly, but his face stayed calm. He reached the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down slowly, his back straightening just enough to show he still had some dignity left. The judge leaned back in his chair and sighed loudly, as if this case was a waste of time. He tapped his fingers on the desk and scanned the papers in front of him. "Name?" he asked without looking up. The old man cleared his throat. "William," he said softly. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Speak louder. This is a courtroom, not a nursing home." A few people snickered. The old man kept his eyes on the table. The judge smirked. He liked the attention and he liked the power. "Age?" he asked again. 78, the old man replied. 78, the judge repeated loudly, rolling his eyes. "Well, at least you're still alive." More laughter followed. But behind the old man's silence, something else was happening. His fingers tapped slowly against the wooden table. The rhythm was steady, almost like a habit he had carried for years. Not nervousness, something else, something trained. The narrator of life, invisible yet present, seemed to whisper into the air. They see an old man, but they don't know who arrived today. Across the room, a young officer looked at the old man more carefully. There was something familiar in his posture, something he had seen before in old photos of war veterans, but he shook off the feeling. It couldn't be, not someone like this. The prosecutor entered the room and dropped his bag on the desk loudly. He glanced at the old man and let out a small laugh. "This is the guy causing trouble." He shook his head. "What a joke." The judge nodded. "Exactly, but let's humor him. Let's at least pretend this is serious." The old man finally raised his eyes. They were pale and quiet, but there was a deep calm inside them, like someone who had seen storms far greater than this courtroom. The judge leaned forward. "Do you know why you're here?" "Yes," the veteran answered softly. "And do you understand the charges?" "Yes." "And you have nothing to say?" the judge asked with a grin. "Nothing to defend your actions, nothing to explain, nothing at all?" The old man shook his head. "Not yet." The judge rolled his eyes dramatically. "Not yet," he repeated, mocking him. "Oh, we have a philosopher today." The courtroom chuckled again. But someone in the room didn't laugh, the clerk sitting near the judge. He kept staring at the old man. Something about him didn't feel normal. The calmness, the silence, the steady hands now resting on the table. It almost looked like discipline, military discipline. The judge crossed his arms. "Let me remind you," he said loudly, "that pretending to be brave won't save you here. You may have been a soldier once, but those days are over. You're weak now, fragile, and honestly, you look like you never had courage even back then." The words hit the room like a slap. Even the prosecutor blinked. The young officer at the back frowned, but the old man did not move. His expression did not change. His breathing stayed calm. The judge continued, enjoying the attention. "If you think staying quiet makes you look strong, you're wrong. It makes you look like a coward." He pointed at him. "A tired old coward." The courtroom waited for a reaction. Anything, anger, fear, pain, something. But the old man only blinked slowly. The narrator in the shadows whispered again. "He is waiting. He knows timing. He knows patience. He has practiced silence in darker places than this courtroom." The judge stood up. "Look at me," he demanded. The old man lifted his eyes and looked straight into the judge. The judge was ready to see fear, but he did not see fear. He saw something else, something that made him hesitate for half a second. Something old, something dangerous, something trained. The judge quickly hid his reaction. So you can look me in the eyes, he said sharply. Good, then tell me why the court should take you seriously. The old man leaned forward slightly, his face still calm. Because, he said softly, you don't know who I am. The courtroom fell silent. The judge laughed nervously. Oh, and who are you? The old man's lips curved into the smallest hint of a smile, but not a friendly one. Someone you should respect, he said quietly. A shiver passed through the young officer at the back. He didn't know why, but he felt it. Something important was coming, something big, something hidden. The judge sat back down, annoyed. Respect, you want respect, then earn it. The old man looked at him again, the calm returning. I will, he said softly, but not yet. And just like that, tension wrapped itself around the room again, invisible but powerful. Everyone leaned forward, everyone wanted to know. Who was this man? Why was he so calm? Why did his quiet voice feel so heavy? The narrator left one final echo. He had arrived, but his story had not. The truth was coming. And when it arrived, the entire courtroom would fall silent. The judge's gavel hit the desk with a sharp crack that cut through the tension in the air. The sound echoed so loudly that a few people in the back rows flinched. The old veteran William did not react. He sat in the same calm position, his hands resting neatly on the table, his eyes half down, half focused. Only someone paying close attention would notice that his fingertips pressed together with quiet discipline, like a habit formed in places far more dangerous than a courtroom. The judge leaned forward, tapping his pen against the wooden stand. Let's move on, he said sharply, before this ancient statue falls asleep in front of us. A few people laughed again, louder this time, more confident because the judge himself enjoyed the mockery. But the laughter died quickly when the veteran finally looked up. It wasn't an aggressive look, it wasn't even angry, but it was sharp like a blade covered in silence. The kind of silence you only see in someone who has survived storms others can't imagine. The judge didn't notice it, but the young officer at the back did. Something tightened in the officer's chest, a feeling he couldn't explain. Respect, fear, recognition. He didn't know. The judge cleared his throat. William, he said, trying to sound annoyed, you are accused of disturbing public order. You are accused of refusing to cooperate with local authorities. You are accused of resisting arrest. And today, you sit here silently like the world owes you something. William blinked slowly. The world owes me nothing, he said softly. The judge laughed. Oh, I highly doubt that. Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice but making sure everyone heard the words. You act like you're special, like you did something important in your miserable life. The prosecutor smirked, the audience murmured. The judge continued with growing confidence. Look at you, he said, waving a hand at the veteran's thin body. You're shaking. You can barely sit straight. You expect us to believe you were some brave hero. You expect us to think you matter. William's jaw tightened, only a little, but enough for observant eyes to catch. The judge pressed harder. Tell me, he demanded, what kind of soldier were you? A cook, a cleaner, someone who carried bags for real men? He laughed again. Or did you spend your service hiding behind others, waiting for the real soldiers to protect you? This time, even the prosecutor looked uncomfortable. The young officer at the back shifted in his seat, his grip tightening on the edge of his chair. The clerk leaned slightly toward the judge. Sir, maybe we should. Quiet, the judge snapped without looking at him. His eyes stayed locked on the veteran. He smelled weakness. He wanted to break him. He enjoyed the attention. The judge stood up. Look at me, he ordered. Look at me when I speak to you. William's head lifted slowly, and their eyes met again. There was calm in the veteran's eyes. But beneath the calm there was depth, dark, endless depth. So deep that for a split second, the judge felt something cold crawl across his spine. He hid it quickly. Tell us about your bravery, the judge mocked. Tell us what great hero work you did, or were you just another scared little soldier wishing he had stayed home? William didn't respond. The judge slammed his hand on the desk. Speak, he barked. The old man inhaled deeply, but instead of anger, the breath carried patience. Patience that felt practiced, learned, tested. When he finally spoke, his voice was still soft, but it had a weight no one could ignore. I served, he said. I served in places you will never know. I walked roads you can't even imagine. The courtroom fell still. But the judge refused to give up control. "Oh, really?" he sneered. "Do you expect us to believe you were part of something important, because your record doesn't show anything?" The clerk looked down at the papers again. "Sir," he said quietly, "his file is unusual." "Unusual?" the judge mocked. "What does that mean?" The clerk swallowed. "Large sections are blacked out." The judge froze for a moment, then scoffed. "Probably a filing mistake. This man couldn't even black out a window if we asked him to." But the young officer's eyes widened. Blacked out files were rare, very rare, usually for elite units, covert missions, top-secret operations. His eyes drifted back to William. Who was this man? The judge walked down from his seat and stood closer to the veteran, only 2 steps away, too close, like a foolish man standing near an unexploded shell. "Tell me," the judge said quietly but harshly, "what exactly did you do in the military? Clean rifles, fetch food, fold uniforms." He waited for shame. He waited for fear. But what he got was the opposite. William slowly straightened his back, inch by inch, like an old shadow rising from the past. The room watched as the tired, bent man transformed, just a little, into someone else. Someone taller, someone stronger, someone who once stood in front of storms and never bowed. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply said, "I did my duty." The judge laughed again, but the laugh sounded weaker this time. "Duty? What duty?" William looked past him, past everyone, almost as if he was seeing another place, another time. "I carried men out of fire," he whispered. "I walked through nights where the only light was explosions. I heard voices on the radio that never spoke again, and I answered calls only a few people in the world knew." A chill rippled through the room. A woman in the front row covered her mouth with her hand. A man swallowed hard. Even the prosecutor stopped smiling. The young officer leaned forward, breath caught. "What calls?" he whispered under his breath, though no one heard him except himself. The judge felt a strange pressure in his chest, a feeling he didn't want, a feeling he refused to accept. "No more stories," he snapped. "Enough of your dramatic nonsense." William looked at him again, calm, quiet, but suddenly older in a different way. Not old from age, old from memory, old from experience. The judge tried to regain control. "You want respect, then tell us your unit, your division, something real." William did not blink. "I can't," he said softly. "Car," the judge repeated, or "whoa." "Can't," William said again, "classified." The courtroom inhaled at the same time. The judge's face tightened. "Classified," he repeated loudly, mocking the word. Listen to this old man pretending to be important. The clerk swallowed again. "Sir, his file really is sealed by federal order." The judge ignored him. He leaned in so close, he could see the wrinkles on the veteran's face. "There is no secret about you," the judge whispered sharply. "You're nobody." For the first time, William looked directly into his eyes, not with anger, but with something much colder. Something that made the judge's breath pause for a second. "Judge," William said quietly, "there are things you don't know." "Then educate us," the judge said mockingly. William's voice dropped lower, quieter, but more powerful than anything said that day. "I will," he said, "but when I do, this courtroom will never be the same." The judge stepped back, uneasy. The young officer felt his heart pound. The prosecutor slowly put down his pen. The room felt smaller, heavier, tighter, because everyone knew. The old man wasn't lying. Something was coming. Something big. Something hidden. And when it arrived, it would silence them all. The silence in the courtroom no longer felt normal. It felt thick, like heavy air before a storm. Even the lights above seemed to hum louder, as if they sensed something coming. The judge shifted in his chair, trying to pretend he was still in control, but his hands trembled slightly when he lifted his gavel. William, the old veteran, sat completely still. His calmness was no longer ordinary. It felt unnatural, like the quiet before a battlefield goes dark, like a soldier's heartbeat right before the mission begins. The prosecutor finally spoke, his voice softer than before. "Your Honor, maybe we should review his full record before." "No," the judge snapped. "I will not be intimidated by a man who tells fairy tales." The clerk lowered his eyes. The young officer at the back clenched his jaw. A few people in the audience exchanged nervous looks. But William didn't move. He kept staring at a spot on the judge's desk. Not a paper, not an object, just a spot, like a memory was living there. The judge tapped the table. "I asked you in the last session who you were," he said sharply. "You refused to answer. Today you speak in riddles." William slowly lifted his eyes, "Because you're not ready to hear it." The judge slammed the table. "I'm ready for anything." William looked at him with a kind of sadness. "No," he said softly, "you're not." The audience leaned forward, unable to look away. Every word felt heavier than the last. The judge forced a laugh. "Enough of this drama. You're wasting the court's time. Tell us your unit, your rank, your division, something real." William didn't answer right away. Instead, he closed his eyes, and for the first time he let his mind drift backward. Back to places he never wanted to see again. Back to the hidden past that shaped him. A past full of shadows, whispers, and missions no official record would ever mention. The courtroom saw him sit in silence, but in his mind he was far away. It began with a radio. A small, battered radio that crackled in the darkness. A voice whispered through static, "Alpha 9, do you copy?" And William had answered, his voice younger, louder, sharper. "Copy, ready for extraction." He saw flashes of desert sand, the night sky lit by distant fire, a helicopter hovering so low its blades kicked dust into storms, boots running across broken ground, men shouting his call sign, yes, his real call sign, but the courtroom did not deserve to hear it yet. Then another memory crashed in. Rain pouring like bullets on a dense jungle, his squad moving silently through the trees, the enemy so close they could hear their breaths, William leading the front, hand raised, telling them when to move, when to stop, when to hold their breath. He had been a leader, a protector, someone men trusted with their lives. And then the memory shifted again. This time to a bunker filled with cold concrete and dim lights, a map on the table, a mission so secret that even his commanding officer whispered, a mission where a single word, just one call sign, carried the power to save lives or end them. That call sign was still locked inside him. And he wasn't ready to release it. Not yet. He opened his eyes. The courtroom came back into view. The judge, the prosecutor, the audience, all staring at him, waiting for him to break. But he wasn't breaking. He was returning. And he brought the weight of his past with him. The judge smirked, finished daydreaming. William didn't respond to the insult. Instead, he said calmly, "You want to know my past? Fine, but understand something first." The judge crossed his arms. "Go on." William leaned forward. "What I did, where I went, the missions I was part of, they are not written in clean ink. They are written in blood." The room went still. "People died," William continued softly. "Good men, brave men, and some things I did, I still hear them at night." A woman in the audience placed a hand over her heart. The young officer swallowed hard. Even the prosecutor shifted uncomfortably. But the judge only grew colder. "Spare us the emotional speech." "Emotional," William repeated quietly. "No, this is truth." The judge stepped down from his seat and walked toward the veteran. "You want us to believe you were some kind of elite soldier, that you carried out special missions," he scoffed. "If that were true, where are the medals, the awards, the documents?" William's eyes hardened, locked away like everything else. The clerk nervously raised a paper. "Your Honor, his record really is sealed under federal code." The judge waved him off. "Anyone can get a page sealed." The young officer stood up suddenly. "No, sir," he said firmly, "not like this. A sealed record with multiple redacted sections means—" "Sit down," the judge barked. But the officer's eyes remained on William. "Sir," he whispered, "were you special operations?" A murmur spread across the room. William didn't answer. But his silence was louder than a shout. The officer slowly sat down, but his eyes never left the veteran. Something in them had changed. Respect had grown roots. The judge, shaken by losing control, hit back harder. "If you were so special, if you were such a hero, why did you end up here, sitting in front of me, accused of resisting arrest?" William looked right at him. "For the same reason you cannot understand me," he said. because sometimes the truth is too big for small rooms. The judge's face flushed red with anger. Enough, you will answer the questions directly. William didn't move, then ask better questions. The room gasped. The judge was trembling now, not just with rage, but with something deeper, something he didn't want to admit. Fear. You think you're above this court, the judge shouted. No, William said calmly. I think you have no idea what stands in front of you. The judge raised his voice to a scream. Then tell us who you are. William slowly breathed in. Then he said something that chilled the room. You already know a little, he whispered. You saw the sealed files. The judge hesitated. The rest, William continued, you'll know when the time comes. When, the judge yelled. William's voice dropped to a whisper. When I speak the call sign. The room froze. Every breath paused. Every eye locked on him. The judge stepped back, suddenly unsure. What call sign? William didn't answer. Not yet. Because the moment he spoke it, everything would change. Everything. The courtroom didn't know it yet. But they were sitting in front of a man whose name had once traveled through radios, bunkers, and battlefields like thunder. A man the enemy feared. A man even his commanders spoke of in whispers. A man who carried a call sign that could break this courtroom open like a shockwave. And soon, he would speak it. But not now. Not yet. Because the veteran knew something important. Timing is everything. The courtroom was silent, so silent that even the buzzing lights above sounded loud. Every eye stayed fixed on the veteran standing calmly in the witness box. The man everyone now knew wasn't ordinary at all. The judge, once so confident and mocking, looked shaken. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his glasses. It was clear he was no longer talking to a normal defendant. He was talking to someone whose past could shake entire governments, someone who carried history behind his quiet eyes. But the story was not finished yet. The veteran lowered his hand from his forehead after giving a crisp salute. No one dared to breathe. The judge swallowed hard. Was that true? The judge finally whispered. You respect a 6. The veteran didn't boast, he didn't smirk, he simply replied in a humble tone. I served when I was needed, nothing more. That humility struck everyone even harder. Everyone in the room understood. Heroes didn't need to shout. Heroes didn't need to explain. Real heroes carried their battles inside their silence. The prosecutor, who had been tough the whole trial, suddenly looked guilty. His folder slipped from his hand and scattered papers across the floor. He didn't bother picking them up. The judge leaned back slowly in his chair, the weight of embarrassment heavy on his shoulders. I insulted you, he said quietly. I called you a coward. The veteran didn't move. He simply looked at the judge with tired eyes, the eyes of a man who had already seen worse things than any insult. You didn't know, the veteran said. But the judge shook his head. No, that's not an excuse. I judged you before knowing anything. I mocked a man who carried more courage in one mission than I may ever hold in my lifetime. Whispers filled the room again, this time filled with respect. The judge took a deep breath. His voice changed, soft, heavy, sincere. This court owes you an apology and a debt we cannot repay. The veteran stood straighter, but he didn't look away. The judge reached for the verdict papers. He didn't even need to read them. He already knew what he had to do. The charges against you, the judge announced, are dismissed with full honor. A wave of emotion passed through the crowd. The prosecutor even clapped his hands once, then stopped quickly, unsure if it was appropriate. A few people quietly wiped tears, some just stared, frozen in awe. But the veteran didn't smile. Instead, he gave a small nod and gathered his old, worn hat from the table. For him, this wasn't a victory. It was just another moment he had to walk through, another challenge, another misunderstanding he had to face. He never wanted recognition. He never wanted applause. He only wanted peace. As he turned to leave the courtroom, someone from the back row stood up, a young soldier in uniform. He raised his hand in a perfect salute. Thank you for your service, sir. Slowly, the rest of the room followed. First a few, then everyone, until the entire courtroom rose to their feet and saluted the veteran who once walked among them unnoticed. The veteran paused at the doorway, the sunlight shining behind him. He didn't look back, but everyone could see his shoulders rise slightly, as if he took one calm breath filled with relief. He finally walked out of the courtroom, stepping back into the world as the same quiet man he had always been. But to everyone inside, he would forever remain the ghost who saved lives, the shadow who protected a nation, and the silent warrior known only by one name: Spectre 6. And that was enough. The end.